Hi, my name is Jessica Beha, and I'm with Great Rivers Regional System for Addiction Care. And we are continuing our This Is My Story series for Recovery Month. September is National Recovery Month. And so the theme for the month is Recovery is for everyone, every person, every family, and every community. And we wanted to take this first week of Recovery Month and just give you some stories, some real life recovery stories. And today we have Amber joining us, who is going to tell her story. Amber, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell your story. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jessica. My name is Amber. I'm a person in recovery. I guess I'll kind of just start at the beginning. So, childhood was pretty good overall. It wasn't like the atypical family situation for me. My parents were divorced when I was 6 months old. My dad was an addict and an alcoholic. Mainly, I lived with my grandparents. They were a lot older. Like my mom and dad were a lot older than most of the parents that my friends had. And my mom worked 12-hour shift work at Union Carbide. So, I was mainly with them. She lived on their same property, so I would see her a lot, but, we didn't really have like the typical mother-daughter relationship. My grandparents were very religious. My grandfather was a pastor, and, like life in their house was very loving and it was really good. But I had to go to church. Like if you lived in that house, you went to church. And I guess I sort of over time started to kind of form a resentment with that and want to be rebellious about it. When I was around 7 years old, a relative of my grandfather's molested me. And that was something that went on for a few months, and I didn't ever tell anybody until I was in my later teens. But it was definitely something that like shaped a lot of my decisions for the rest of my life until I kind of let go of that later on. I was good in school, made good grades, didn't really get in trouble at school, was athletic, started playing basketball when I was like in the 4th grade, played softball, had a lot of friends. But I guess still like today, I was pretty awkward. I always was. I didn't like fit in. And I've been about this height since I was 12. And I was always just shaped different than the other girls and taller. And I was also, different. And so I always tried really hard to fit in and I wanted to be a part of. And earlier on, that wasn't that bad because that looked like being super active in school and being in student council and making good grades and being in honors classes and honor society. And then later that turned into something that was worse. So when I was 15, I went out with a guy that was significantly older than me. I mean, he wasn't like old, but I had no business being with him. And we broke up. That was about the time that I started using substances other than alcohol. I would drink occasionally when I was 12, on kind of just at like parties or, sleepovers. And it wasn't really that bad. I mean, obviously it was bad because I was 12, but anyway, at 15, I started to use other substances. And the same guy that I had gone out with raped me when I was 15. And again, that was something that I didn't share with anybody because like he was in the same kind of group of friends that ran around and partied together. And so I saw him all the time. And like I felt like I had to act like I was okay and everything was okay. And I was really afraid of him. I had a couple friends, like our drug use just kept getting worse. And a lot of people were supporting their habit by selling drugs. And so someone that I had gone to school with since 1st grade and someone I had gone to school with since 6th grade ended up having it was basically, it was all around drugs. I'd like to tell you that we knew the exact reason that things transpired the way that they did, but we don't, and we probably never will. But a really good friend of mine murdered another really good friend of mine. It was around Christmas, 1999, and it was definitely something that didn't happen in my community. Not that it should happen anywhere, but things like that were just unheard of. Like the most you heard of was like a fist fight in the Kmart parking lot on the weekend, and then this happened. And when all of that happened, everybody got drawn into it, and everybody was being questioned by the police. And that was the first time that I really had the thought enter my mind, like, this lifestyle isn't for me, something has to change. And I was scared, because just the thought that somebody that was that close to me did that, it rattled me a little bit. And I decided to go to a detox. And I would like to tell you that after that experience that I made changes, but I didn't really. I got out, and maybe for a few months I didn't use, but inevitably it just started happening again. I ended up meeting my first husband when I was 21. We got married, and it was like a marriage of convenience, because we sold drugs together, and it kind of worked out like we were friends, but it obviously it was a toxic relationship. I got pregnant with my first child, and I really wanted, like, I was able to stop using while I was pregnant, but I really wanted to have that family unit that I never had growing up. I wanted to be this super nurturing, attentive mother that I didn't necessarily have. So I had my daughter, and it was almost like I repeated everything from my childhood. We got divorced when she was 6 months old. Like we separated, like it was just a lot of the same. And we had, my ex and I had a lot of domestic violence situations, and I can't say that it was all on him. Like I'm not a victim today. I obviously played a part in that, but it just, my life was chaotic. So, I had a decent job at that point, and I was kind of holding it together. I wasn't using other substances, but I was going to the bar a lot. My mom was super close to my oldest child, and so it wasn't ever a problem to just leave her there and go do my thing, and then just go to work. And I wasn't being a responsible mother. I was very much absent, even though and it kind of looked like exactly what happened with me in childhood. Like I was working and doing my own thing, and my mom was raising my daughter. So I ended up getting pregnant with my second child, and dad wasn't around. It also wasn't a situation that I really wanted to involve the father in, and like my life, I've spent so much time covering up things that I thought weren't acceptable to tell other people. And that's kind of what I did with him. I still kept my job, but things got really unmanageable after I had my second child. I think that like keeping all those secrets, it made me really, really sick. And then I got in another relationship. There's like a pattern with me, like guy, whatever. So I got another relationship, and things were okay for a while. Then my using picked up significantly. I ended up losing my job, and I was just kind of lost, and I really thought that was like the worst it could be. And the person I was with, we were also very toxic, and there was a lot of domestic violence involved. And, in retrospect, a lot of like, this time I let that relationship, like he was not just mean to me or physically violent with me. He was bad with my mom, my family. My kids lived in fear because, you know, they watched me get beat up a lot. And they also watched me do things to him, you know, like it was just, their life was chaos and it was terrible. I got pregnant again. I had my third son, and I didn't use while I was pregnant with any of the three. Um, but after I had him a few months later, it everything just spiraled. It snowballed. Um, you know, my substance use went up, and I was doing substances that I hadn't even done in the past. It was just like anything I could find to do. And, you know, I was overwhelmed with the three kids, and it obviously didn't help that I was drinking and using all the time. And so in 2012, I was still like, my kids and I had been in a homeless shelter at one point, and it's really sad to say, but the time that we were in the homeless shelter without a man was the best time that me and my three older kids ever had together. It was the most stable that we were, and it was definitely like um, the best time we had emotionally ever together, period. I decided to move back in with the guy that I had been with because he was getting a house and it was all going to be better and everybody was going to work, and, you know, and it got bad real quick. I moved out of that shelter in the end of April in 2012. And on May 18th, 2012, I was arrested for 3 felony counts of child neglect because, you know, it didn't involve drugs. Like, I mean, it did, but they weren't found, or none of that had to do with the charges. It was that, you know, I'd have DVPs, let the guy come back. We would do the same patterns over and over. And my kids kept seeing that. So it was basically mental anguish. And I went to jail on those 3 counts. And luckily I had family that when I called before they took me to jail, they came and picked up all 3 of my kids, and my kids were never separated. You know, they stayed with family, and that's still where they are today. Charges were dismissed after 12 days. And, you know, I have so many points in my story where I'd like to say that that was the thing that made me change, but it absolutely didn't. I got out of jail, and when I did, you know, I was able to start to see my kids again. But, you know, it was obviously under the supervision of my family members that had them. And I was seeing them on a fairly consistent basis. You know, everything was good. Then I started, you know, like the using it became out of control again. And it would get to the point where I would, you know, have plans to go see them at my cousin's house. And then I knew that I was too messed up to go. And then I would cancel. And I got arrested again that same summer. And this time it did involve drugs. And, you know, at that point, my family members were basically not willing to let me see my kids because, you know, it was causing them harm. You know, until I got into recovery, in my mind, I was the victim there too. Like, I should have been able to see them, but I know now that they were doing that for their emotional well-being. And so I got out of jail in the beginning of August. About mid-September, I was able to start seeing them again. I moved back in with the guy that I was with when I got the child neglect charges, and that was when my cousins had decided it was enough. I didn't see or talk to my kids for a very long time. And I ended up getting pregnant again with a little girl. And that was the one time, or the first time during a pregnancy, I wasn't able to stop using. I did quit a couple months before I had her. I never went to a doctor. Like, I guess I kind of thought, like, if I didn't think about it, it would go away. And I went into labor, and I had her, and she was super beautiful and surprisingly healthy. I gave her up for adoption. I never held her. I never smelled her, but at that point, I felt like it was kind of the most responsible decision I had made in terms of parenting. And it was still something like, I tried to hide from people I was pregnant. I didn't tell my mom, my brother, I didn't tell my mom and my brother until the day I had her that I was even pregnant. And at that point, after I had her, I moved in with a friend, and it was like a safe place for me. Good family, and they had supported me no matter what, but they knew what was going on. So I went there, and it was kind of sad to say, it was like I needed to have rules and regulations like for someone else's home, because I hadn't been able to successfully adult ever, and I got a lot of love there, and I finally quit the cycle with going back to that same guy. Not that any of it was his fault, because I kept allowing it, but I finally broke that cycle and hadn't used for a few months. And then I started going out to the bar with some friends, just trying to like get things off my mind. I still wasn't seeing or talking to my older kids, and at the time I like romanticized it, like, well, I'm just going out and having a few drinks and it's social and it's fine. But slowly it started, kicking all my addictions back into gear. So I started hanging out with who became my second husband at that point. And things were okay. Like I casually used, like it wasn't taking everything over like it had before. And I really thought that I could maintain that and that everything will be okay. We got married and we both had good jobs. We had cars, it was like the healthiest relationship I had ever been in. And I got pregnant with my daughter, Paige. And, like I was super happy. Like I was excited because I knew that I had messed up with my older kids, and I thought this was my opportunity to get it right. And, I was with somebody that was going to be supportive and help raise her. So she was probably about 6, 7 months old. And I fell back in with some of my old friends. Not that it was their fault, but it was those people, places, and things. I started going to the same places, and you can't have a dirty lifestyle and live clean. And that's basically what it turned into. I started using again every day, the same old ways that I used to, that always led to the downward spiral. And at that point, my husband didn't really use the substances I was using. He hadn't used them before, but that toxic nature of our relationship, in a way, I have a little guilt associated with it, because I feel like he thought we would be closer if he did the things that I was doing. And then it didn't take too long before we were using every day together, and that just made everything so much worse. I was still hiding things from people a lot, and that's really hard. It's hard to keep up that show and that act all the time. At one point we split up, and I was staying with another guy, and that was the worst it had ever been. Like I thought it had been the worst in 2012, and then I thought when I had to give the baby up for adoption, that was the worst it could ever be. And it got so much worse so quick. I eventually moved back in with my husband. I got pregnant and I had a miscarriage. I never went to the doctor, the hospital, nothing. So kept doing the same things, got pregnant again. And not only did I not stop using, I don't think I had any desire to stop using at that point. Like I didn't want a baby. I didn't want to be pregnant at all. To be honest, I kind of felt like if my lifestyle continued going the way it was, that I wouldn't be pregnant much longer, which is really sick and it's super sad, but that's just where my mentality was. I only went to the doctor 3 times while I was pregnant with her. And the third time, the doctor told me he was putting me in the hospital to have her because I was extremely sick, and I was non-compliant. I didn't show up for my appointments. I didn't do the things that I needed to do to take care of her. I went in the hospital to have her, and I hadn't gone to the doctor before when I had the miscarriage, and I'm also anemic. So I had to have blood transfusions to be put into labor with her. And, there was no delusion about what I had been doing while I was pregnant. And honestly, like, my only fear in that moment was I was afraid that I was going to lose Paige. Like, I didn't care about the effects on the baby per se. I mean, I didn't want her to die, but my only focus was that I didn't want to lose Paige. And so another woman in recovery had been talking to me for months, and she was like, I feel like you should go to Recovery Point. It worked for me. I'll help you every step of the way. And my biggest thing was, it was really an excuse. I was like, well, I don't know who would keep Paige while I was gone, and so something happened when I was in the hospital delivering, and that was the worst I'd ever felt in my life. Like, the doctor came in and he yelled at me, and he was like, were you trying to die? He was like, I don't know how the baby even fed, because I had like no blood, like I was ready to die. And I thought, I've got to do something. And at that point, I didn't even want to do it for me. I wanted to do it for Paige. So CPS obviously got involved. I had a 90-day protection plan, and the woman who ended up taking care of the kids while I went to Recovery Point, let me stay with her. And when I got out of the hospital, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Recovery Point. This is going to happen. And like, it's sad, but I couldn't stop using. Even after all of that in the hospital, knowing CPS was involved, like, I couldn't quit using. And I was supposed to go to Recovery Point on a Sunday, and I was too busy out using. I think that at that point I'd held the baby like 3 times. And, thinking back on it now, like, the detachment I was able to have with the situation's super weird. So a friend of mine that I was supposed to be hanging out with this Sunday night, I was supposed to be at Recovery Point. I ended up not showing up, and I found out Monday morning that he had been shot execution style, and it scared me. I was like, well, it's time to go. I've got to do something. And I showed up at Recovery Point June 17th, 2019. I wasn't court ordered or anything, but like, I knew if I didn't do that and I didn't finish, like, I was going to lose my kid. I was probably going to die. So, I was there 11 months, and, I think that a lot of us go through the thing, like, I didn't trust women, and I didn't like women. And, I always was chronically codependent on a man. Like, even when it pulled me down, I still felt like I had to have a man. And I got there, and there were all these beautiful women that were all, in charge of their own life and their own destiny. And they had kids, or were working to get their kids back. And, they were doing all these things, not by themselves, but through their own strength. Obviously it's like a big family, but, they were doing it. And I hadn't really seen that before. I mean, I knew it was a thing, but like, just watching it in action, like, I can't explain how beautiful it is, And I started, being a member of a 12-step fellowship, and working with a sponsor. And it was the first time in my life that I ever told anybody all of the things that I felt like I had to hide from everyone. And that made me really, really sick. So I did that. And I remember like it was close to time for me to complete there. And I was a nervous wreck. I thought, oh gosh, like I didn't want to leave that protective bubble. And at that point, it wasn't so much about the using, but I didn't know how to adult like at all. I had never, like I'd had jobs and things, but I'd never successfully adulted. And I didn't know what to do like with my free time because I had always been drinking and using and selling and doing all the things. So and I didn't know how to be a mom. I had never been a mom really ever. um so oh wait, I need to backtrack. My mom passed away when I was at Recovery Point. I had about 4 months clean. And like I had resentments with my mom and I felt guilty about it because she was gone. But I guess it helped me know that I feel like that she finally saw me, even though she didn't see me finish it. She saw me doing something to make things different because I never thought that I would not use. And I don't think that my family thought that I would ever stop either. So I ended up being introduced to someone who worked for West Virginia Sober Living, and they were opening a home in Charleston for women with children. And that was something that was a passion of mine, like, because I struggled so much with being a mom and being an addict. And I wanted to be able to help women in that situation. And I feel like I wasn't ready to be alone yet with my 4-year-old. I decided that the baby that I had, the lady that kept her is now adopting her. And that's what works for our family. We're very much a blended family. And, something that I always had regrets my whole life. But through the fellowship that I am in and the women in recovery that helped me be honest with myself, I'm like at peace with it. Obviously, it wasn't an ideal situation going into it, but I feel like now it's healthy. And, I'm finally doing what I feel like is best for a child. And until that point, I had been selfish and I needed to keep up appearances. So people thought I was a good mom or thought I cared. And not that I didn't care, but I was just trying to look a certain role. And I finally just looked out for someone else's best interest at that point. So now I am a house manager, and I work with women who are in early recovery and they are being reunified with their children. And it's extremely rewarding. And if you would have told me in 2012, 14, 16, or 2019 that I would be someone working with women that are trying to become better mothers for their kids, I would have absolutely thought something was wrong with you, because I don't, in my eyes, that was as bad as it could ever be for a mom. It was all bad. So I think it's really exciting, and I'm super grateful to have that opportunity, and it's really fulfilling for me. Also, I am a recovery coach for West Virginia Sober Living in Kanawha County, and I get to help people get in treatment, or, if they want to do outpatient, just find meetings, sober living, whatever it looks like for them. I can help them be a better version of themselves than they were yesterday. And that helps me a lot. But mainly, I can go to sleep at night and I'm okay. Life isn't in recovery isn't, I thought when I came in, like everything's going to come back and it's all going to be perfect. And, those relationships with my 3 older kids are just going to be right back. And, my family's just going to be so happy and so proud. And that's not what it looks like today. I would be lying if I told you that everything just came back because I did something. Because the fact of the matter is I damaged those relationships for a lot of years. And it's going to take a while to get back whatever that's going to look like eventually. But for now, I can say that my recovery family is amazing and very supportive. And, I know that if I continue to do the next right thing, that's the best thing I can do to build back the relationships that I damaged so much in the past. I hope that someone gained something from this story, and I appreciate you asking me to be here, Jessica.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I know when I kind of cornered Amber at Glow Run for Recovery meeting, and she was like, but I am so thankful that you agreed to do this. I really do appreciate this so much. I love, and you're not the only one I've heard say this, but I've heard a lot of women and men, but mostly women from Recovery Point say what you said about doing the next right thing. And I love that. I think that's awesome. But I want to thank you. I really do. I want to thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit and being willing to tell your story. We want to thank you on the other side of this screen watching for taking the time to listen to Amber's story. Remember, September is National Recovery Month, and the theme this year is recovery is for everyone, every person, every family, and every community. And Amber is just one representation of that. Just one representation of that. And so we want to thank you so much again, Amber, for joining us, for being a part of the This Is My Story series. If you or someone you know is interested and more information about West Virginia Sober Living, you can find them online and find out more information about their programs. And maybe if you are looking for treatment or recovery options, you can also go online or you can call 844-HELP-for-WV. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this, and be on the lookout for more This Is Our Stories this week. Thanks, guys.